Okay, good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Hi. If we can check our cell phones. And we'll call the meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Stern, Commissioner Shoemaker,
Present.
Commissioner David,
Present.
Vice Mayor Moore,
Present.
Mayor Hillman,
Present.
Town Manager Labadie,
Present.
and Town Attorney Tercivia.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, next is the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Well, Happy New Year to everyone. Hope you had good holidays. And here we go. Next is approval of the agenda. Any additions or deletions? I have one. That's a brief discussion on intracoastal speeds. I'll bring you up to date on what's occurred and just want to get a consensus of the commission on what their feeling is. So let's add that to, I guess that would be new business. Item D,
And that's intercoastal what?
intracoastal
Intracoastal.
speeds,
Speed.
intracoastal speeds. Then Teresa and I made a presentation at the Beach Condo Association. So I thought I will just show that to everybody, but we can do that under town comments. Comfortable with that? Okay, with that one change, can we have a motion?
I move we accept the agenda as amended.
I second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Here, no proclamations, public comments. Any comments from the public? No comments. They are closed. Announcements. First is board vacancies. Board of Adjustments and Appeals has 2 vacancies for 3-year terms. Financial Advisory Board, 1 vacancy for an unexpired term ending April of 23, 1 vacancy for an unexpired term ending April of 24. Natural Resources has 2 vacancies for unexpired terms ending April of 24. Looks like we have to get to work on filling boards again. We did a great job in the past, got them going, but here we go again. So if we can all think about people in our neighborhoods, buildings, developments, what have you. There's plenty to choose from here. So let's get at it, okay? Upcoming meetings and events, January 10th at 1 o'clock is code enforcement. On the 16th, town hall is closed for Martin Luther King Day. On the 17th at 9:30 is the town commission meeting.
No, it's 1:30. You may have gotten a new agenda on the day.
Okay.
Not 9.
Are there any other changes besides that on the new agenda?
No, they just added your item.
Okay,
There was an item added under unfinished business. So.
okay, we'll get to that. On the 24th at 9 is coffee with the mayor. So we'll start to get those out. Get any responses yet? It's kind of early. Okay. And on the 26th at 11:30 is Financial Advisory Board. Nothing on consent agenda. So let's move on to a fire rescue update.
Thank you, Mayor. Fresh off the presses. Will you cue that up for me? We have a massing that just came in from the architects this morning. But otherwise, everything's moving on pace and on schedule. Trucks are all secured. We get some final touches on the design. Chief is working with Eric, going through some HR and solicitation and kind of get job applications and recruitment in place. So we're just really feverishly working with the architect, with Kaufman Lynn, We've tightened up that schedule, chief. So we're picking up the pace, if you will. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to see a lot of speed and movement on the design to break ground, hopefully late February, early March at the latest. Some of the tricks with that is chief wants the bays done soon. So we're going to kind of direct the order a little bit on construction. So if there's a little bit of a hiccup in his contingency plan, at least we can get the equipment on site.
Makes sense, totally.
Since the last drawing on the programming, we've added a mezzanine on the internal to the base for some additional storage, always critical here on the island. So here is their first go at, I don't know if we can get any zoom on this. We just got it. But basically you kind of get a look and feel. You scroll up a little bit. I don't know if we can on the fly here put this together, but you kind of get an idea.
You want the middle one?
Which are
Well-
you focusing on? The middle?
Well, any of them, just give me one of them. So basically you can see, I know it's quick. I'll get it to you after the meeting, but I just wanted to get something to talk from. So basically the 2-bay immediately in front, it's predominantly a flat roof, but we've added a couple of elevation changes and kind of a false roof, if you will, on the front tower to kind of match the look. If it's completely roofed, it increases the cost substantially with we did a truss roof. So a flat roof does save us a few dollars and speeds up construction. And it kind of sets the tone for the newer look for potential future buildings and how that looks. This is also better for a hurricane scenario, having a flat roof versus a pitched roof. So that helps us out. You can see the doors, the bifold doors will have a nice, beautiful look to the front. This is kind of the back of the building. So you're never going to really see the back of the building. Can we get to the top of the screen? Can you scroll that up just a touch? But nonetheless, so we got the elevations, trying to get the massing components of it in place. We're tying down some of the construction costs related to that, trying to kind of keep it within those boundaries and parameters that we've set. So that's good. We've executed the purchase of the ladder truck. Chief Joseph is getting that. You can come up too, in case there's anything I'm missing. Chief Joseph's got that all procured. We're going to take ownership shortly, put it into storage in some fashion. We receive the ambulance or our rescue vehicle here in the next week or two. We'll get you some final design scripts on what it's going to look like on the wrap. Again, all the other procurement list items we are slowly working through from our SCBA equipment, which is the breathing apparatus, bunker gear. Chief's really given me an exhaustive list for which the team will have to procure and kind of start coordinating that. Also, what we're getting from the architect and the contractors are those long lead items. Those beautiful red doors that were up there, those can take 8 to 12 months. So it's time to start ordering them. I guess elevators, short supply. So we're gonna have to order an elevator and slightly design around an elevator. There's 3 or 4 options, whatever we can get our hands on. We'll change that internal look and feel to that. Couple of final touches on the programming. We'll get that in place again. But so basically we're done. Bid sets. You got the schedule to the top of mind. I just got back from vacation, so it's coming back quickly. Mid-January, we're supposed to have a bid set of documents, if you will. So the contractor, which is Kaufman Lynn, can start throwing it out to all of their subs and locking down cost, price, and timing. So, and then following that by another 4 weeks will be the contract set for us to enter into a contract more formally with Kaufman Lynn on the gross maximum price of construction. So we'll start to tie those items down too.
I noticed one thing. Since Glenn joined us, we've been spending an awful lot of money.
He is an expensive fella, isn't he? So yeah, fire's
David, you
pricey.
got to get on that.
You were warned.
He reminds me more every morning. So again, you could see, again, we'll do our best here. Again, I'll get this out to you. The next meeting, maybe I'll get it queued up a little bit better and get each elevation will probably be adjusted after Thursday's internal meeting. But you see the new parking lot. Again, we keep the 2 bays, but create a slight pavilion with side door entry. It's hard to see in here. Is part of the deal. If we can afford it, if not, we may have to make this a secondary project, which is that partial demo and parking lot reconstruction. So we'll have space. Plus, if you can envision on the old bay, a couple roll-up doors on the side of storage area. So when we have our ever favorite food truck events or their community events, we have an indoor outdoor area with bathrooms that will be available to the public. So we kind of flex that space a bit, which we'd all continue to talk about, which we kind of really like that originally, that we'll have that flex space for community events also. So more of an indoor outdoor space. So you can do concerts outside, indoor outdoor with fans. We can pull the trucks out so you can go into the storage bays and use that as part of the space. I think the community will really like that. I know that you all agreed and thought that was a great idea as well, and kind of doing that and putting in some of the other elements. So that's where we're at. We got the massing. It's pretty straightforward. It's not a fancy structure by any means, but it does accommodate all of our needs. And again, like we said, we're working through all of those details as we talk. What else have I missed on any of the
Just
technical
specifics.
updates?
We made a bid on the apparatus. It was accepted. We're processing the PO as we speak. We hopefully have a check ready or some kind of payment method ready by later this week or early next week, which means we'll take delivery of the truck, have it inspected up there, and then stored probably not on site because we have no room for it, and I don't want to store it outside. So we're arranging the storage for the year that we need. In the meantime, we'll remove all the markings and everything on the truck to get ready for our look and feel. The ambulance is in the process of being fitted with a stretcher. Parts of the first part was already delivered at the site in Pompano Beach. We're waiting for the stretcher to be delivered around January 16th. When that's installed, we'll bring it to this site right here. And so you'll have, and then get it wrapped so we could actually do the next food truck event. If there's a public event, we'll have it parked out front to do a demo. The other thing is we have starting to receive some of the larger items for the EMS side of it. We got a heart monitor. So if you want to see what that looks like, coming out of my office, we'll take it out of the box, and CPR machine is here. We have some other things that are being delivered on site. So as those things deliver, we'll stack in the office, and then when we get the unit on site, we'll begin loading non-perishables in the truck, getting ready for the inspection, which is going to be later of this year, maybe towards the fall, late fall of this year, we'll have the state inspection. We're also preparing for the state application for the EMS license. We have the county license. Now we have to prepare for the state license. That application is finished. Just got the documents notarized, waiting for a check to be printed up. Then we'll send that up to the state to begin that process as well. If you have any questions, we want to.
I have a couple. One is, so the 2 new vehicles will go in the new building, and what's going to go in the existing one?
Okay, so let's look at the 2 new vehicles going in the new building. Let's say the first due or the first out vehicles that will be in service will go into the fire station. The old building will hold our reserve units. So if one goes down for repairs, maintenance, what have you, we'll pull that one into the fire station. The other one goes down for repairs or maintenance, whatever.
And
So
we'll
the
have
first
4
due-
vehicles.
We'll have 4 vehicles. 2 will be in service at all times, with the third as a reserve. So if we need to transport somebody's a second concurrent call, we could man that very quickly and then get that out to the site so we don't have to call for mutual aid.
And if we have the money, you're saying that the pavilion, I think you used the expression, would only be on the side facing the parking lot.
That is
That is correct. We
no
don't have a
other
lot
change.
of design details, but that's basically where we would go. If you think half of the current station, all the living quarters and stuff would disappear, that would be paved or brick paved or something like that. We'll get the details to you. And that would be a flexible space. So when we're not using it, you can park there. There'll be removable bollards. We have an event, we move that, slide the doors up, pull the vehicles out, the reserve vehicles at that time, which will be nice and clean. Pull those out. You'd have a big indoor space that'll be under some air. And then you can partially move outside of that space under a kind of like a pergola, if you will. And that will allow, just an improvement to that use that we have. So when we do have Mingle Jingle, Spring Fling, food truck event, we have this really cool space that we can accommodate everybody and have that indoor and some additional bathroom space.
So the reason why I even mention it is because the truck events, the food truck, it's over the top now. It's so popular. So that in the design here, I really would like to have a really focused effort to think as you're doing of combining, not only it being a storage backup for fire, but also to be an integral part of our food truck events as we go forward.
That's exactly what we're hoping to do. So we can, again, with space being so limited for us, you know, every square inch, if you will, counts towards how we do things. And parking, the architects under the mandate, maximize parking, find spaces wherever we can, because we are, you know, building this additional station. So we're trying to minimize that loss. We'll probably lose a few spots, but not as bad if we do this flex space, or you could park during the day. When there's an event, you can move the cars out and boom, you're good to go.
I was just trying to make this as for the audience, if they're
Right.
watching, a clarification. My last question really is just to confirm. So we don't expect, you know, the shovel to hit the ground until March?
It's probably looking like that. To my frustration, right. To my frustration, yes. But they've realigned, the Kaufman Lynn team has realigned itself, given us a hard schedule to hold themselves to. So now we're really pushing on those timelines. Lost a few weeks with the holiday, but we have a deliverable on Thursday and every week moving forward. And they won't be able to break ground until we sign a guaranteed maximum price contract with them and we start moving. So that's all going to be in the next, 4 to 6 weeks. We'll get that final contract. They'll mobilize and they'll start going.
So I'm assuming you're going to have some delays anyway. And so can you handle if we don't start really working on this until April 1? Will we still be able to meet our schedule because we're under the gun? I want to guarantee, right?
That's the gun we're holding the contractor and everybody too. So that's the big discussion we had in the last meeting. I wanted a guarantee from them and we finally got that we will try as early as possible, but we look like we may be under the wire, but barely under the wire. So that's kind of why we're kind of programming it, because we need to store the units on the site. So if we have to do a fallback position, maybe using a facility here in the meantime until it gets done, we have the units on site.
Yeah, so they promised us substantial completion,
Right.
as hard as guarantee they can give outside of knowing some random, but in April of 24. So a month before go live, we're supposed to have substantial completion. If we move that schedule up, it works to our advantage. That's why Chief has kind of put out that directive that bays have to be go. Because if we have to switch quickly, we can bunk people in the old for a short period of time until the punch list items, if you will, on the final.
Yeah, we're expecting a TCO by April. So
Yeah.
that will allow us to substantially allow the majority of us. If the department signs off on it, we could probably move most people in.
The key, Dave, is not so much for operations, because we always have the existing one to fall back on, as we
Right.
said. It's for training. So if we can get it going a month early, for example, then Glenn has a whole nother month there. So the people can get used to the facility, get used to where everything is, et cetera.
So I understand he's trying.
It's a
The
tight
operative
schedule.
word, try.
No, we're not going to try. We're going to make it happen either way, but
Okay.
we may not meet all of our goals, but we'll try to do the best we can to make that happen.
And I'm going to follow up with one last point. The vice mayor brought it up last time. I think it's still relevant. Do we know where we're storing all of this, the vehicles?
We're in the process of working that out right now. We're going to store the current version of storage is that we're going to store the ambulance in the utility building. We have a space set up for that. I'm working with the seller to store the fire apparatus offsite for the majority of the time during construction, and then we'll bring it down within a month or two of start date. So we get it wrapped, materials put on it, and put in service right away. So we have a proposal to do just that, which I need to talk to the manager about, and when he signs off on it, we'll begin the process.
Okay.
But we know it's a complicated process. That's why you hired me to make all that happen, and we're making it happen, and we will.
Very good. Thank you.
Anything, Evelyn?
No, it was clear.
Yeah, looks very good, though. Are there any changes in the financial projections since the last meeting?
That's the manager's off. Question. Step back from them.
Right. You know, we're like, we've had, Commissioner, we didn't have our meeting, but we're aiming towards that target of 7.5 million is still a kind of our doing our best to move towards that date. And like I've told folks in the, you know, some of the final details won't happen until we get into construction. If something in the supply chain or the marketplace goes, the contractor loves contingencies. So they're going to make numbers kind of out there. We just won't know. And we're not knowing until, you know, every design change, we get the numbers get a little bit clearer. So we're going to come in on this, you know, right at that, you know, I tell you all, prepare to spend all 10 million, please, because we're going to need it with the that inflationary and supply chain issues has really pushed up construction. So where we hoped we had a lot more room, we don't, but we're still meeting the residents' mandate to get this done. So.
Anything else, Dave? Good. I'm good. Thank you for the update. We're here if you need us. Okay. Let's gonna go right back to you now, Marshall, because we're moving on to the 22 and 23 strategic.
Okay, strategic priorities. I always like to start with just kind of telling you how proud I am of you all for all of these accomplishments. If you look at completed by fiscal year, like I always, you know, I say in jest, you know, the smallest big town in South Florida. Well, this really proves that it is. And we've done a lot of work here. Again, it's kind of an overreaching thing. We've planned well, we've executed well, and we've worked well together. And that is really seen in how we've been able to accomplish a lot of these projects and initiatives. So we kind of broke those down by fiscal year, what we completed since we started doing it. We have what we've commenced. There's still, I have to admit, maybe some improvements on the progress notes that we have there. But again, kind of what we're working on and what's being planned moving forward. Again, like you see the collective bargaining, that's going to go up to commenced here. And I'll give you some updates later, but that's going to kind of move up and get going. So, you know, we have those for you to look at, and they're ranked in order. So some of that ordering is definitely going to change. We start collective bargaining, that order, it starts taking shape. So this is kind of this exercise that we do. We started last year, I thought, with a really good process where we take 2 to 3 meetings, talk about some things, make some suggestions on how we want to move, what's a priority, not a priority, kind of move that along. And again, we have these 4 areas, these strategic priority areas: organizational excellence, public infrastructure and resiliency, community safety, community enrichment and stability, sustainability. That's where we kind of group all of our projects, our departments, and our operations together under these 4 categories and slot a lot of those projects in there. Again, for those that are watching or hearing for the first time or looked at this for the first time, it's a very simplistic document. I kind of like it. It's very dynamic. It's quick. It doesn't lend itself to being a paperweight. You know, you just throw it on your desk, you know, like if you see your audit, sorry, David, if you see the audit, you know, you got 200 pages. Boy, you glance through that and it just sits on the corner of your desk and then you get to when you need it. This is something that's supposed to be quick, easy, not overly elaborate as far as defining things, but here's what we're working on. You're kind of telling us staff wise, what you want us to really focus on. And we kind of, you know, move off on that. So we kind of keep it kind of more of a simple document, rather than like a comp plan or something where you have a lot of, you know, goals, and then you got 7 objectives for each goals. And then you got certain, and then it's just, you're in the document versus executing. And this commission has told me to focus on execution versus on writing documents. So we have these in here. We've added a few that we believe are in there, but, you know, you let us know. You know, we kind of show the departments and the advisory boards and who participates on which items or supports that. So kind of begins to, if you will, simplistically align the organization and the political structure behind it as well. So you guys tell me what you like, what you don't like, what changes, add this, take this off. And this is kind of where we go. And then we kind of keep giving you those updates.
Yep. Okay. First of all, thank you for pulling the document together and having it done in time for us to digest it before the meeting. I think once we discuss commenced and discuss planned, we have to start thinking about merging planned with commenced on a ranking basis. Because there may be some things that we are working on that because what we have planned might become more important than what's already begun. So I don't think today's the day to do that. I think today is the day to get familiar with what we have here. Any questions, anything you want to add or subtract, and then we can talk about merging it at a later date. One thing I didn't see, may have been an oversight on my part, but under commenced water sewer rates. Is it in there someplace? I
Because it's
missed it.
completed.
Well, no, it's reviewed every year.
It's reviewed every year. And so, yeah, and that's a question I have too. Something that's reviewed every year and it's already on a schedule, does it belong on the strategic priorities? I would guess not. It's part of our regular thing. So it is on here as completed. I saw it more than once, I think 21
Yeah,
and on.
We had original water and sewer rate study, and then we
Study and then
had
update.
study.
update, which we kind of I want to say recently, last 6 months, completed the final tweaks.
and the
to-
whole execution was done. I totally agree with you. Maybe we should, one, we can't ignore it, and there are many things that are just ongoing,
Right.
but are unique unto themselves as a subject.
Mhm.
So maybe we need to think about how we handle that.
Like
And
an
I think-
annual review of rates, which we
Yes.
discussed doing. Maybe we add that in there to remind ourselves to come back to
Yeah.
it. Towards what? Do you guys decide like late summer to come back to,
Well, it's
The
got to be
last
done
series.
before budgeting is done. So
right,
Right.
midsummer? Yeah.
And I think there might be a couple other things
I'm
that
sure there
fit in there, like this, maintain and refine 5-year financial forecast model. I would think that's something that we do
Yep.
on a regular, so there might be a few things that fall under that bucket.
maybe we set a little segment of its own.
Right, so maybe when we take a deeper dive into
Good.
these things.
Yeah,
we
when we go to
about that.
rank, maybe we look back a little further, like you're saying, and then carve out a third subject, which is
can-
annual reviews or ongoing, something, so we don't lose sight of it. That's all.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'll cross that out. Okay, let's just go through comments. John, we'll start with you again on what you see on here, don't see on here, needs to be added.
If anything, it is amazing when you look at the list, what's completed, which is kudos to the board or the commission rather, I'm sorry. And so that's impressive. I just wonder if we have too much on here. When I look at what we need to do in 23. I mean, we've even got things like where is it? The gas leaf blower regulation.
Like, time out. These don't have to be completed in 23, but they are projects that are noted, and then we just rank them. You may think that that is the least important of all, so it would go to the bottom of the list.
Well, but yeah, as strategic priorities.
Yep.
My observation is that clearly can't be one. I mean, given everything else we got going on here,
Okay.
but it's a
Well,
task.
You see, I happen to disagree with that. I think
Okay.
it's rather important.
Really.
So-
Okay.
We'll talk about it when we, either next session or a separate session. We'll see how this goes. That'll tell us how much time we're going to need. And that's when we battle it out.
All right, good.
Okay?
I mean, other than that, it's a lot that's on here as it is. I'm good.
You don't have anything to add.
No,
Evelyn?
only subtract.
No, I don't have anything to add. However, I agree with you that the question of gas blowers versus electric blowers is important to a lot of people because of noise pollution.
Yeah. And other things.
Yeah.
And the little, my knowledge on a 1 to 10 is maybe a 5, only because we looked at this subject in our development.
Yeah.
So we did collect some information, said a little bit about it.
Yeah,
Not-
I'm just thinking
not
in
enough.
terms of priorities.
I'm with you.
Strategic versus tactical.
Yep. Okay. David?
Yeah, I think this is really terrific. I would suggest, though, that we go back to the completed projects and see if there are things that have become, once again, strategic priorities going forward. I can give you some examples. The example would be the charter review process. We went through a charter review process where Some things were successful, some things weren't, but to wait 8, 10 years to do that again, in my opinion, would not be appropriate, and that might be a priority to relook at those things on a sooner basis.
Excuse me a minute. Are you thinking specifically about the 4 questions that were rejected, or are you thinking about the whole charter review process?
I think there are 2 issues here. One is to look at the charter review process, and the other is specifically to look at the things that did not pass, why they didn't pass. Should they be brought up again, discussed, and not have to wait the 8, 10 years for them to be brought up again?
Total agreement. So they're kind of like A and B. Okay.
And that's exactly what I think that is a strategic priority.
Okay,
Okay.
the only other item I'd point out, and this is a changing thing, and that would be again on the building recertification ordinance and program. As we all know, this may be changing, and that's something that may become another priority.
Yes, sir.
All yours.
So did Evelyn already went? She.
Yep, she
She
didn't have
did?
anything.
Okay, all right, so. make
She's
sure.
comfortable.
So I think there's a lot of work to be done on prioritizing, which I guess we'll do a deeper dive whenever we.
Say that again, please.
For me, I think there's a lot of work to be done on prioritizing. Because, some things are falling lower in the list that I think are, much higher. So I think there's a lot of work to be done there. And then to follow along with the charter review, I think I would pull out the funding limit as its own separate item, because it is just so important instead of just the.
If I may, that is on the agenda today. and I
Yes,
am
it
gonna-
is.
and I am-
It is.
And I am going to bring that up. as a
Yeah.
separate issue.
Okay, yeah.
Right on.
So, yeah, I recall that it is coming up today, and I would further support ranking that as a high item on the strategic initiatives, just that specific funding limit. I think that is becoming like more and more critical and a very high priority. And then also, just like what we were saying before, I think some of these items are kind of classified separately as ongoing things as opposed to what I would call strategic items, but.
Okay, well, when we go
talk
through
about
them,
that
let's
as we
let's pull them out.
structure it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep,
we'll classify
good.
them as separate. But other than that, I didn't have any other new projects. So
Okay.
that's it for me.
I didn't have any new that hasn't been discussed. I took a shot at ranking planned. And it's interesting. I don't want to go through ranking. I just want to tell you my experience when I did it. Obviously, number 1 and number 2, they're out of our hands. So that's top priority. We gotta have collective bargaining done. But then when I went through this, I saw a few items that I thought were extremely high priority. And then I saw several items that I thought were extremely low priority, not a whole lot in the middle. Okay, so we'll see what happens when we merge them for a ranking. Okay. Seems to me as though it's going to be a lengthy discussion because you've already got some preconceived notions. You may agree with her, you may disagree. So maybe we schedule just a workshop for that.
Sure.
Okay, are we comfortable? We all agree on that?
So
Okay.
we will poll the commission, get a special date.
Yep.
Sometime in the next month, and then
Definitely, yeah.
and then we'll send out a strategic priorities, kind of like a worksheet where you could rank it if you want. So we just leave a blank and then you could rank them. And then
Okay.
we can collectively pool those maybe.
Yeah, let's make sure we're all clear on this. Where my head was
Yeah,
that we would merge planned and
commenced.
commenced. And during that process, there will also somebody else may come up with some things that we haven't thought of now. That's okay. And then during that process, we create yet a third segment, as you were saying. And
Ongoing.
that's ongoing.
Yep.
But don't put things in ongoing until we. as a
You
group
decide which ones go. Yep.
Okay, because we'll battle out each one. Anybody have anything else to add for that?
No, I think that's very good.
Okay,
I like it.
all right, and that meeting would be exclusively for that,
That's it.
nothing else.
Nothing
So
else.
no additions to that agenda.
Nope.
Okay, great.
Well.
We all comfortable? Okay, let's move on to item C, which is the reserves discussion. We talked a little bit about this at the last meeting. And then at the Beach Condo Association, I spoke about it in more detail. And Evelyn was there representing her building. And of course, Teresa there worked with me on putting it all together. In fact, she put it together. Great job. And the response from, everybody know what the Beach Condo Association is? I'm sorry, David was there as well. It's the condos from basically Boca and Highland Beach. Delray was just added, but I don't think anybody from Delray was there. And then there are suppliers that do business with the condos, whether it's real estate or insurance or concrete workers, et cetera. So in each year, the end of each year, we make a presentation, we meaning Scott Singer, the mayor of Boca, and myself, on just kind of what have we accomplished this year and what are we thinking about working on in the future. After that was done, when I was presenting, we then talked about reserves. And to a person, they were all violently against it for many of the same reasons that we said, but everybody agreed that it's choice, as you had brought up previous meeting. So I spoke with our representatives, both at the county level and at the state level. And they both were in agreement that the reserves don't make a lot of sense because we have recertification. Peggy said that they're planning on reviewing this again anyways. It was done far too quickly. But if we agree as a commission that the reserve segment is unnecessary in terms of a requirement, then I'll write a letter to Peggy that she can use as her outline when it's discussed in session. David, what do you think?
I have no problem with it as long as we do state that it is a choice and that neither way is a mandate.
Absolutely.
I'm on board with that as well about the choice and no one way is the right way for every building. But I wonder, and I don't know how much this has already been discussed as they went through this legislation, but I wonder if offering like an alternative, like I guess my understanding is the reason why they want to mandate reserves is because they want to eliminate the perhaps a reason for not doing repairs if there isn't enough money. That's my understanding. The whole reason they even want to mandate reserves is to eliminate the excuse that there is no money. So I wonder if we should offer or support maybe, or, you know, something for us to discuss that instead of mandating reserves, mandating something like if repairs need to be done, whether there's money or not, you know, perhaps reducing the vote result requirement. Like I think right now, the bylaws typically say a certain percentage of the association have to vote in favor.
Time out. No.
No?
Maintenance in most condo bylaws documents, and it's maintenance, it's a decision of the board, period.
Okay.
If it's an ours, if it's $25,000 or more, and it is a visual improvement, if it's cosmetic, that requires a vote of owners. And documents that were done, gonna say 20 to 40 years ago, that was around 75%. We've revised ours to 51. I think buildings that have revised have reduced it because you can't even get 75% to vote, let alone vote
Right.
one way or the other. But maintenance, clear carve out board decision.
I thought
And
that
for
was
that
one.
very reason.
So I thought that was an issue with Surfside,
Huh?
was it not?
It
It's a
was,
huge issue. in
That it
Surfside.
wasn't voted, it wasn't,
no, it was disagreements within the board
Okay.
itself.
okay,
Because of
There
what you're
was-
saying.
Because of course.
Because the residents were different groups. There was South American group, there was a Canadian group, there was an Israeli group, and the groups got together and all of them, not all, most were opposed to it. But again, the board could just have done it and assessed it. They chose not to.
Okay,
And I'm guessing that's their documents, because I haven't seen any that are the other way. The reason being is maintenance has to be done because it's a
Right.
life safety issue.
right,
So why
Right.
do you need a vote of people? That's
Right.
the rationale behind it.
right, right. Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is if there's a way to make the board vote in favor of doing these maintenance items.
There is a way called recertification.
Okay, so you
And
think the
that's-
resurfacing.
That's a
addresses
state
that?
and county, not county, state and town requirement. And the towns are now responsible to make sure that all these buildings get recertified.
Mhm.
Now, if they don't, what are the penalties? What are the next steps? That wasn't dealt with in the bill. Okay, we dealt with it.
Right,
If it's not done, we're going to get it done.
right,
But that requires the money be spent to make it a safe building.
mhm,
And then within it, every 7 years, you got to get recertified here.
right, right.
Inland, other places, I think it's 10 years,
So
or
where,
newer buildings, 10 years.
where did the state land then on the recertification process? What is the
I have-
status?
That's a twofold process, really. First is the visual look. They have 180 days to do that. If that checks out okay, then building can be recertified. If that doesn't check out okay, there's another 180 days later, they have to have a detailed analysis done.
And that is in place, that is done, that is.
That's signed,
Because I think
sealed.
that's what we've been working on.
Yep.
Okay,
And
okay,
the reserve discussion is part of that bill. There was.
it's
there was
part of
more
the
than
bill
one
that
second.
that mandated the recertification.
Yes.
Okay,
So we, some of us, I shouldn't say we, because I can't talk to everybody. I'm troubled by the first portion of it, the 180.
Mhm.
I think that's nonsense, having a quick look. You spend another couple of days and a couple of $1,000s and you find out for sure.
right,
Okay, but even with that, you can't do the second look if the first look says, yeah, you're in good condition, but these are the things that you should be working on. They're not structural, but they need to be taken care of. Because while you're doing that, they're going to come for the second look and they can't do that because you're working on it.
right,
And the timing's way off. You're never going to get all these done that quickly.
right, right.
So they got a lot of work to do on the recertification part of it also.
So do you only want us to talk about the financial part of it and not these other timing issues? Should
I-
we also bring that up as well?
I think they're both issues. We should bring them both up. But I'm afraid if we try to get people focused on too much of it, we're going to confuse them. We're not going to get
Right.
anything.
Right.
But they can both be dealt with. I can deal with both of them in a note, but just put more emphasis on the reserve. See, the reserve portion, I think, should be removed,
Completely
and the recertification portion, I think, needs to be revised.
modified. Mhm.
Comment
Yeah,
on reserves. Two things, 2 points to make that you haven't mentioned. One is, one of the reasons why reserves could be important to a condominium is if they want to get a line of credit.
Mhm.
And most banks will say, hey, you have no reserves? I'm not going to give you a letter.
that's not correct at all.
No, they-
I'm
they'll give-
saying it happens. Depends on the bank. They could have rules. I know that it has happened.
I have two buildings. I have the full association and I have our building. We have line of credit for each. One's $1 million, the other 750,000. We don't have any reserves to speak of. I mean, a couple 100,000, 250, something like that. No,
Yeah.
and it hasn't been asked.
And it hasn't been added.
Nope.
See, if there was any concern about the building, clearly that would be a problem for the bank. Now, the bank would come out and take a look, and if they see that there's some concern, or it's not been certified yet, then we have a problem
I suspect down the road that recertification is going to be the decision point.
for.
Just as
a
it
letter
will,
of credit.
just as it will be for insurance.
Absolutely. So that was my first point. The second point is, and the problem I have with reserves is it's now gotten to the point where some on a board of a condominium association are afraid to use the reserves because they need to have an emergency fund in case the world falls apart, we have a hurricane or whatever. And so they keep all this money there. The worst part of it is if it's a fully funded concept where you can't mix the money between categories, then you're really restricted versus a pooled fund where you do have that. So my concern will be where the state comes down on, well, when we say reserves, they've got to be fully funded reserves. Or is it going to be pooled reserves? Or do we need, are they discretionary based upon certification? So it's, to me, it's three levels.
Two things. One, they have already specified in the bill that it can be pooled. So that's a non-issue now. However, the bill only requires 9 items that are structural,
Plus
So-
10,000.
plus any deferred maintenance item that costs $10,000 or more, and nobody's going to have that. Okay. It doesn't include things like elevators, which are outlandishly expensive. More than most of the things on the list. So,
Generators.
yeah, generators, they're not that crazily expensive, but there's a lot of expensive items that they don't have on your swimming pool. One of our buildings is putting the swimming pool in, it's costing over $1 million. Not on the list, because it's not a structural item. So it's like half baked to begin with.
I know that an elevator costs $500,000.
You just went through that.
Well, we haven't done it, but we have looked at it. And it costs $500,000. That doesn't include installing it. It just includes getting the elevator. And it takes 6 months to get, at least. So you have to know that you want it ahead of time. You can't wait till you need to replace it. So when something says that you have a expected life expectancy or remainder life expectancy of 3 to 5 years, you can't wait to that 5 years. Because if it breaks, you're in trouble. And if it's your only elevator, you're really in trouble.
Can we avoid an elevator in this fire station?
Anything else?
Well, I just read an article yesterday. I wish I could remember the group, but some group is recommending that they in fact keep reserves. And I believe it was a group of lawyers, if I'm not mistaken, but I can't swear to it. I think they may have been recommending that it be modified from what it is now. We are in a unique position here. There really aren't any buildings on this island that aren't able to special assess for work that needs to be done. And people will be able to come up with the money. But there are plenty of buildings in places where they can't do that because everybody would sell and move because they can't afford a special assessment. And that creates the problem, which is why they want funding to be there, or at least a percentage of the funding to be there. So I understand it from both perspectives. And we really here look at it from one perspective and not the other, because it doesn't affect us.
I agree with what you're saying. However, I don't think those that can't afford it should be required to do so that those that can't afford it are then required to do it. I think that's the wrong approach. That's one. Two, taking reserves out of it, just the whole concept of the government telling residents what to do with their money, I think is gross overreach and beyond what should be done in America, period. Bad enough we got to pay our taxes, okay. But I'll tell you, the next thing down the road is going to be auto insurance. Auto insurance has to be renewed every 6 months or every year.
Mhm.
It's getting more expensive all the time, particularly down here in Florida. The next bill is going to be you individually have to put some money away every month to pay for your auto insurance in this special auto insurance account that you need to report on your taxes. I mean, just
Okay.
think about
And
the
it's just
concept,
the
though.
Concept, yeah.
It's just terribly wrong.
Because among other things, you're right. In Florida, there are a lot of people who don't have auto insurance.
Hello. They shouldn't
lot.
have, And they don't have licenses, but they're driving anyways. But that's a different subject. My point is, if we go back to the original need for the reserves, every condos board does not have the exact same documents
No.
we were talking about earlier. So there probably are some out there where maintenance has to be voted on. And if it is, they ought to change their documents.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the first thing that should be done from a state level, is demanding that maintenance not be voted on. That's what your board is there for. There's a lot of other things that can be done besides telling people what to do with their money. And it's just terribly unfortunate for buildings that have large reserves. Somebody sells their unit, they leave all that money.
Mhm.
And you can have 25, 30, 50, whatever, $1,000 sitting in your share of the reserve account. After 10 years in my building, in today's numbers, I'll have $56,000 sitting in that reserve account. Now, it's obviously going to be more because none of those things have to be repaired in the next 10 years.
Right.
And prices go up and you got to redo this every year. So we could be having $60,000, $70,000 of our money sitting in there. When I sell the unit, it's gone. Now, somebody's going to say, well, the unit's worth 70,000 more because you have reserves.
No.
A very good, smart realtor like the one sitting to my left knows that and would tell people that. But anybody that's a realtor out there, I'm not knocking you, but most of the time that's not even a consideration. So
All right, but
So-
John, to your point about not being able to get a line of credit, it isn't so much getting a line of credit for the building, because the building can back it up with their ability to special assess. It's people being able to get a mortgage that can be affected. Individuals who want a mortgage can be affected by the amount of reserves that a building has.
Absolutely. I totally agree. If I could go back to your point, Mayor, putting together this letter using hopefully Representative Gossett Seidman as a vehicle to affect what's going on in Tallahassee. Would it be good to have all of us sign that letter with you as a joint effort?
well, you're more than welcome to, but if I write the letter representing our board, then you don't have to sign it.
And state so.
Of course. And that came from a discussion I had with Peggy and a discussion that Marshall and I had a discussion with our new representative at the county level as well. It's just the pendulum swung too far. That's all. They need to bring it back and put it in the middle.
Yeah, we need more flexibility for sure.
Anything else on that before we move on? Okay,
Mayor,
yeah.
do we want to let the public make any comments or?
Oh, sure. Come on up. Sorry, I didn't see that. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Hi, Judith Goldberg, resident.
Oh, Judith, if you're going to agree with everything I said, then you can have as much time as you want.
Come down and
Just bring it down and press the button.
press the button so that the green light goes on.
Okay, I'll try
There you
again.
go.
Judith Goldberg, and I'm a resident of Seagate, and I've spoken before about this. It's of a great concern. I do agree with many of the sentiments, particularly the mayor, and we've had discussions about this. So my Seagate is a over 55 residents. So we certainly have a lot of families, couples, individuals who have been living there for a significant period of time, have come down and under the in the lifestyle where they came here to establish a beautiful home and rely upon whatever they do to their unit and keep up with their responsibilities on the HOA. So the condominium law is established, it's going on over about 60 years. And now we have faced this catastrophe. And this is a reaction which I agree has been so wrought with fear and anxiety on every scale, safety scale and financial scale. But the original 8 lawyers that sat in the room to put together this this law that initially passed, I wonder how many of them were experiencing it personally, or had some rather than just looking at it as you know, a third party overreach. But
Yeah,
many
it
of
was
them,
done very, very quickly, so they didn't have the opportunity to
Very
get input
quickly.
from everyone.
and notably, to my knowledge, there has been no final report on the investigation of why even the towers went down. So we jump into this, let's get it all done. All right, so now we have the milestone report. Now I have, as I've shared informally with some members of the commission, that our community of 4 buildings, we started to look at and to do some renovation, painting and minor cement work after our qualified engineer did a walk around, a viewing, very similar to what has been described in what's currently the municipal and the state law in the phase 1. And based on that, the projection was well, 70,000, let's say 300,000 for the whole thing. And it wasn't expected. We didn't anticipate assessments. You know, we had moderate reserves and the funding that we expected. Of course, once they started to tap, we were just the concrete and painting was 7.2 million. We're not finished yet. We're coming to the end. We've been under construction since the first of the year. So we received notice at the very beginning before the municipal law, before the state law changed it to 2 phases. Now, so whether or not there was, I mean, we're going to be left with new buildings. They've basically been digging and digging, and the residents constantly come up to me, aren't they doing too much? Now everyone's in the construction business and everyone has something to say about it. So we are doing it, and as many people will do it. However, the current law, just with respect to the milestone, is so unrealistic as to deadlines that they put everyone at risk. Municipal, our compliance, our codes, our zoning, how much time? I mean, it's pretty explicit as to when we have to when we have to start from the time of notice, and hopefully everyone gets notice in the proper way, so that's not attacked. But even given that, there's not enough engineers, there's not enough materials, so there are delays, and there's going to be some flexible, arbitrary, and capricious decisions being made by the town to give people more, hopefully, you know, more time to do this and effectuate it. But we have done this all through assessments, and unfortunately missed the boat. That was a decision of the current board at that time. One that I personally disagree with, but everyone had to come up with significant dollars. So, but with respect to the reserve study, as was mentioned in an earlier commission meeting, we're going to be completely revamping our buildings and our property. Why do we contemporaneously have to do it again financially? Because that's what's being expected. We have to, at the same time, start to reserve. I must say, for my reading, and I'm an attorney, for my reading of the statute 4D, we certainly have time, explicit time to file that report. But there's no indication of when we have to, really, it's not clear about completion. Is it a year? If it's a year, that's not practical. That's not going to happen. We started earlier.
There's nothing in there about
There's nothing.
completion of work.
So what benefit is that? Really, it's a law without the proper reasoning behind it. There's about, I read an article, 1.5 million condo units, of which over 900,000 are older than 30 years. So what's going to happen to the state of Florida? I mean, originally this was for seniors to come down, or people to come down and be able to live comfortably, and condos were originally thought to be a very good way of affording affordable housing for people that wanted to particularly reside here, retire here. And now the whole creation of it is going to crumble with this, because I am seeing flight. We are seeing flight in our community. Because whether or not the estates can pay for the assessments plus the expected reserves, it's so concerning that the next stage of life cannot be spent in their residence with care if needed. Now they have to run. And where are they running to? Another condo? No. Another 3 stories, because really this is only 3 stories and above. And there is actually a footage of requirement. So you could have a 2-story that reaches into.
Sure.
So it's coming down. I don't think it was thoughtful enough time. I think maybe there was too much pressure on the senators. They got together and in a very short period of time knocked out this current law. So I'm also seeing, particularly my personal experience, is that now that there's personal liability and this extra pressure put on the board of directors, who's going to want to serve? Personally liable. Everyone now has to be carrying their personal lines, umbrella policies, and hope that that's going to be, it would be negligent, really, personally negligent for a board member to not carry that. So that's another expansion that's going to be made. And why should the people do that? Okay.
Well, you would take an umbrella on your D&O
Okay.
policy.
So I think it's wonderful that we are involved and going to be doing something and be in the conversation. I would suggest, as apparently you are doing with the other towns, to gather more and more steam to present our case, Highland Beach, to Tallahassee to
Yep.
get something done.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Anybody else?
Oh, I have one other thing on another topic, and it's a question.
Is it
On
the
Milani.
topic that we're talking about?
Well, can I mention Milani? No.
Not the end of the
Okay,
meeting.
thank you.
So Mayor,
Yeah.
should we mention there's a lack of closure as to when the repairs need to be completed, that we find that that's a key piece to what should be considered, or is that too many things to put in one letter?
Let me take a shot at it. It's very hard to put a date on of when it's to be completed because of many of the things that were just said. And we all know about the difficulty getting contractors, et cetera. But they could put enough time, say within 2 years, then that would make sense. But that's why when we do an ordinance, there's a first read, there's a second read, we think about it. Okay. In 3 days, they did this. And that's why we need to get it changed. But yeah, I can throw that in for sure.
Our ordinance, we say a year, correct? That it has to be done in a year? I forget
We don't
what
have an
that-
answer on that yet, and council
Okay,
stepped out.
I couldn't
We'll-
recall what-
We'll get an answer before the end of the meeting,
Okay,
because he took the assignment.
Yeah, we basically say you have to, after you get your final inspection that says you got to do this, you got 300, our ordinance, 365 days to get started, and then you will give us a construction schedule and you take it to completion.
Maybe I misinterpreted the question. I thought you meant, do we have to abide by the state or can we stay on ours?
yeah, I couldn't recall what Highland Beach.
We can be
was
more
looking at.
restrictive, but
We-
not
we are
less. So
more
we really get
restrictive.
differences at phase 1 is where we gave more time than they did. But we recognize the difference that phase 2 is really work.
Right, we only have one phase. And
Right,
they have a full year for that. The question is, do we need to adopt the state bill now, or can we wait until January 1st of 25? And that's what Glenn was going to take a look at.
but the Highland
did
Beach
amend ours.
rule, the Highland Beach rule is,
We amended ours to match
Yeah,
the states where we had to meet their minimum threshold.
Yeah, but maybe we move too quickly.
I think you have to, but we can always change it. So
I'd like to find out, because if the answer is we don't have to do it until a key date, then why should we be forcing our people to do something that's going to get changed anyways? So,
usually
We'll
when
find
the
out.
state adopts, you have to meet theirs if you have a matching because they preempt us with their state
no, I
legislation.
totally understand that.
Yeah.
However, in this particular bill, there was an effective date. I'm using the word effective. I don't know that that was written in it, but there was a date when reserves, for example, have to commence.
Correct.
When it says fully funded, meaning the first year. of
Well, we
your
didn't do anything
reserves.
with reserves.
I know that.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm saying, does the fact that that's not until 25 really, is the whole thing not until 25? It doesn't say yes, doesn't say no. When was going to take a look,
It's in effect.
right?
Mhm.
Okay, anything else for one? Okay, subject you want to hear about, John? Discussion of battery operated blowers. Just a little bit of background, because in our development, it was proposed to our developments board. And some research was done. Yes, it's much, much quieter. In fact, you barely hear them. So the big win is obviously quiet, but also they don't blow quite as hard. So if you're near the intracoastal, you're not blowing stuff into the intracoastal. Another good win. There is a cost involved to the landscape companies because they've got to switch over. It's a one-time cost. There's also a slight increase in operating cost because they're not quite as powerful. Now, this was stuff that was looked at, I'm going to say 2 or 3 years ago. So technology changes, maybe they're more powerful now. But at that time, hypothetically, if it took the landscape employee an hour to blow everything, now it's going to take them 1 hour and 15 minutes. Well, 15 minutes isn't a big deal, but times 5 locations, you just lost an hour. So those were the other pieces on it. I do believe that Palm Beach is electric only. And I know that other towns are looking at it. So I think we should look at it and get more information. What I had is scratching the surface on the information.
So
And
my,
if we did do it, we'd put out some effective date in the future.
my only reaction, honestly, is this commission needs to look at strategic priorities. That whole issue of leaf blowers is more of okay, it's an ordinance consideration. It's a tactical issue. Personally, when driving down A1A, I don't know how many times you've run into it, but I've got a fairly new car with a nice paint finish and, and I've waxed it and everything. And all of a sudden I go past these blowers and they're just blowing up a storm and all the stuff's hitting me as I'm driving through it. So I'm not exactly a big proponent of it. All I'm saying is, my goodness, the condominium association should make their rules on what they want rather than forcing the whole town to ban gasoline blowers. Again, I prefer electric, quiet. It's not as powerful, doesn't blow as strong. It's going to take them more time to do it. So their labor costs will go up a bit, but that's all part of being green. The point I have is, why are we forcing the whole town to do this when in fact it can be done by any of the condos that use them within their property anyway? But anyways, that was my approach or my
Okay, valid,
process.
clearly valid. And when we go to rank it, we'll think about that.
And for John's perspective, we could make an analogy between what he just said and what you said about reserves.
Yep.
Yeah, same thing.
It's the same
It's an
general
overreach.
concept.
We could make that analogy. I don't know that it would be valid.
Yes.
Okay,
Wait,
I mean, I don't know that we want to spend a lot of time discussing it. Let's see where it falls on priorities. If it's high enough, then yeah, we'll dig into it.
But we
If it
need to
stays
go
low,
back,
we'll leave it low.
because we talked about reserves from the state level and not what David was going to present.
Isn't that what who was going to present?
No, this was a discussion.
No, this
of
data
charter.
is for spending limit.
Yes, but that's not what we talked about. And we've already come to that on our agenda.
Do we miss something?
It was a revised agenda.
I'm looking at my old agenda.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. You were right. I missed that one. Okay.
Say that again.
Now
Wait a
we're-
minute.
Say that a little louder.
Lawyer said, I'm sorry.
What was that, attorney?
You'll never hear it from me again. Once. Put it in the books.
I'm sorry, folks. We have to enjoy this a little bit. That's all.
I love it. Okay. Discussion of funding limits, page 18. David? Do you want David to help as well? David and David,
I'd like to.
not
propose-
Mrs. David.
Yes, not Mrs. David.
I'd like to propose and make a motion if we get a consensus on raising the charter limit for expenditures over the $350,000 by referendum. I would also like the proposal to be simple, clear, and understandable to voters. Let me just stop to give you a little history on this thing. Not the present Charter Review Board, but the one prior to it, I was a member of. This topic came up, a recommendation was made to the commission. The commission played around with it, with things that 4 members have to vote on a certain amount, 5 members on a different amount. The amount should be unlimited, the amount should be 500,000, it went nowhere. It then came to this Charter Review Board, recommendations came to the commission, and it was battled around, and in my opinion, it was a little confusing to the voter. And that was one of the main reasons we didn't get passage for some number. We did a little research on it, and David helped out on this, and he can answer the question. If we took the $350,000 in today's dollars, it would come to $775,000. Nothing else, just in today's dollars. It's unrealistic to deal with a number of 20 years ago. I'm proposing, but it will not happen until next year, and I'll talk about the timing in a minute. I'm proposing an $800,000 clear limit with the amount to be adjusted at the CPIU rate each January 1st. Simple, clear. The average has been about 3% a year over the last 20 years. We put a chart together. We did it year by year and a little bit of a research, but it is so unrealistic at 350 and just talking to the water plant and something that might have to be done. There are numerous items that fall into the $400,000, $600,000 range that the commission would have to go to referendum on and wait unnecessarily on something that has to be and should be done. So in saying that, I'd like to open it up for discussion, and I would like to start off by proposing a motion to put a charter amendment on the next eligible election to raise the commission spending limit from 350 to 800,000 as of January 1st, 2023, and adjust that amount every January 1st by the CPIU.
John?
Well,
Wait, you have to vote on his
Is that,
motion.
that was a motion, right? Is there a second on that motion?
We have this.
Okay, I'll second.
Now we can discuss it.
now we can discuss. I was going to second it. But I will say that we've had a whole lot of conversation on this subject. I mean, my goodness, this commission had thought through this. My personal opinion is that the referendum question was twisted in a way that would cause major problems to somebody who isn't up to speed on what's going on and doesn't know what's happening and kind of just takes somebody's word of advice. But fundamentally, you're absolutely right. I mean, we looked at 750 being the number or 1 million, but in that range is what we really need to have as a practical way of funding requirements for a town that has certainly changed in 20 years, that has expanded with new services and capabilities that we didn't have 20 years ago, not just talking about water and fire and police and the Marine unit, and you can go on. So we absolutely, for not only the benefit of this commission, but for future commissions, in order to be able to act in a prudent manner and in a timely manner without all of the expense and delay of a referendum to do what we know will be done anyway. You have a sewer system that needs to be fixed. We have to have a referendum to go fix it. It's ridiculous. So I completely support the idea of having this, along with some other questions, added to a referendum that we need to do again and do it with better wording. I would agree. We need to word it. And we are restrained, however, and would remind everyone that based on what the state has levied down on top of us, we can't do an awful lot to promote understanding of what it is that we're asking for. So we've got the handcuffs on. It's unbelievable, but that's the fact.
Another reason why the question has to be very simple and clear.
Exactly.
Marshall, seems to me I remember you're telling us that there were certain things in, I believe, in the water plant that would cost almost $1 million to replace.
Yeah, so Pat did his most recent capital and we're for the first time, we're starting to see what would be considered pretty typical maintenance items triggering that 350 number. Because one is you can't really go into it saying it's 200 and then it ends up costing 800. So when you start anticipating, David got the same list, but like our water tower, we got a series of VFD drives that run the plant. Each one's like, 200 grand and we need like 4. I can't go buy those. I have to wait, so we're starting to find ourselves that it's going to harm our ability to do regular capital improvement planning as a commission, as a community without going, because you need lead time. So I know David had asked, when's the next eligible date per his motion? That's March of 24. This is January 3rd. So March of 24, middle of March, we could potentially have a question before the voters. So that's where David and I met with Pat and I said, okay, Pat, I start to see these numbers. We need to anticipate now because we haven't amended the charter. We have to start really reaching out and thinking way down the road to pre-plan. So if you need this, I need to know now for potentially 3 years from now to start planning to get a referendum question to the voters. It's very tricky. I understand the concept of the cap. I'm sure there's some bigger governments that would like some reasonable cap, but yeah, we really need to find a way. I think we're going to find ourselves buried by that issue. And I think it's magnified by what we're seeing with the fire station. Something that we anticipated costing 5 is now 7.5 million, and it happened in 8 months, virtually overnight. And there's no, a lot of these construction estimators and stuff are saying, as we've seen in the past, once the price goes up, it doesn't come back down. It just holds and maybe doesn't grow as fast anymore, but the price went up. So that CPI that David had in your chart projected, I see 3 and he's at 6. Well, we've jumped multiple years all at once. And I think we're going to find ourselves hitting that pretty quickly. And it puts us in a situation. Now we do have the emergency. So I don't like to govern by sewer eruptions and water plant failures to do that. It's not really a good way to go because when you start picking off little projects, you're only doing little parts. So it costs 3 times as much because you're going to replace 200 linear feet instead of doing a whole system wide where when you look at that cost benefit, it's better to do it now. So, and then I think we have other projects that, I remember, I think I was with the mayor and we were at the charter meeting and I said, wait a minute. I go, how many people here are from condos? Just about everybody raised their hands, 90, just like our population, 90%. I said, well, I need you to approve money so I can go fix the roads in Bellito. You going to support that? And they all were like, probably not. Yeah, because you don't need those roads, but they're community assets that we have to maintain. So how do we take care of a state requirement, statutory responsibility, if a majority wouldn't get to it? So getting some of that relief, as Commissioner Stern is, and this commission has totally been on board with, I would tell you, basically looking at notes, every commission since 91 has been on board with, I think we put ourselves in a box a little quickly. So, but we have a lot of projects coming up that are, want to fix a lift station. It's over 350.
Understood.
Yeah.
Well,
Look, we've been through this numerous times as a group. Everybody has talked about it, how you can't live with the 350. It's going to cost the town a lot more money. If we do live with the 350, you can make example after example. So we all agree on that.
but then I wouldn't limit it to 800. I would figure out.
You read my
figured
note.
out- No, I didn't. But I
Here's my
read your
note.
mind. What you estimate at now, what our most expensive project would be, and not a capital improvement project, but more of a maintenance type project. Because if you have to replace a lift station, that's not an improvement, that's a maintenance. If you have to replace the other things you were talking about for 200,000 apiece, again, that's maintenance. That's not a capital improvement if you're replacing. If you're building new, that's a capital improvement.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. Like if we look at that sewer lining project that we were all hopeful that we'd get done for $1.5 million, it's probably by the time we actually get our arms around, it's a $3 million project.
Yeah, look.
Just because of the polymers. I mean,
Yeah, the concept is coming up with the number we believe is necessary and marrying that with the number we believe the residents would vote positively for. The one thing that many of us have done, and you did it as well, is you're assuming the 350 back in 91 was the correct number. May have been way too low. Maybe they should have had 500. If you had 500, this would come out to $1.5 million or something. I don't know. But for all these reasons, 800, I believe, is too low. Can we sell more than 800? We can't sell it. Like John was saying, it's got to be one simple question. So I think we need to think about, talk a little bit about what the number should be. Recognizing we cannot mail notes and all that stuff on why.
Yeah. But I also agree, we need to tie it after we set a number. It needs to be tied into the CPI or something, because otherwise you're putting future commissions right in the spot that we're in now.
Absolutely. No question about it. But
And
the-
that's,
I have a long discussion with somebody in one of our meetings. Might have been a coffee with the mayor meeting. He lived in a private home. He was not opposed to the number that we had or the manner in which we came to it now as a percentage of the budget. He was opposed to automatic increases on it. And I used the simple example of if it costs $1 million for a hook and ladder truck today, in 5 years, it's going to be more than $1 million. So how can you approve that now with the same logic, not approve it being higher based on something? I think we were basing it on purely a percentage of the budget because the budget was an indicator of the needs of the town. Don't know if that logic was right or not, but I think that's what we did. You haven't spoken yet.
Yes, so I totally agree. This is becoming an urgent issue, this funding limit in the charter. I think what we've discussed in the past, that 350 may have been too low. It also was at a time when I don't think we provided as many services as we do now. So for many reasons that we can go on for a long time, I think the 350 was too low. I think 800 is too low. And I strongly believe making it a function of the budget is the best way to make it inflation sensitive, make it sensitive to the services that the town provides. And I maybe it's my mathematical background. I don't understand how that is complex. Making it I think what we had proposed was 10% of our budget. And then it ended up being about $1 million. And then it would have been inflation sensitive going forward. And it would have also reflected the amount of services that we provide in the town, because going forward, once the fire is under our belt, it will be a percent, that budget will be baked in, and then it'll be a percentage of that. So I do feel, and it would really help future commissions, because it will be, you're not going to be faced with having to change a fixed number. So I strongly am opposed to a fixed number. We will always be in this position. We get another 5-10% inflation years, and we are quickly out of date. I have serious concern about the engagement of the voters of the town. We've done, I feel like, as long as I've been a part of this commission, I feel like we've done a lot to really try to engage the people of this town. We've done truck events. We've done, this town sign thing we've done with the marine ordinances. We had 3 meetings inviting, people to come. And I talk to people in my neighborhood where that marine thing impacts them, and they have no idea we're doing this. No idea that we are impacting probably the most important, the most valuable piece of their property, which is the waterfront property. So I do have serious concerns about, okay, I really feel making it a percentage of the budget is the right way to go. And we're going to talk amongst ourselves and we're all going to think that it is the right way to go. But until we can convince the people who are going to vote, we're going to go nowhere. In my opinion, we really I think that has to be a higher priority project on our strategic priorities, how to engage the voters of this town and the residents in general. And we really have to put our heads together as to how we come up with a solution that everyone will vote for. So I don't know if this is legal or not, but I guess I would say we come up with our question or whatever you want to call it, well before we put it on the
Definitely. There
whatever.
are ways to pretest. this.
Yes.
And
So almost have a
Whatever we
vote.
do, we should be pretesting.
Exactly. So I don't know if I don't know what we're allowed. I mean, obviously, after it's officially on the ballot, we obviously can't talk about it, but I imagine we can talk about it before. So, I mean, I guess I would say use all our resources, the Committee to Save Highland Beach, whatever it is that we need to get everyone on board so that it is a rubber stamp by the time we put it on the ballot, because we're not going to get anywhere. Unfortunately, I think that the unfortunate truth is what we have done so far has not been effective in getting the residents on board with what we're doing or informed with what we're doing. I think the marine facility is a huge example of that. Unfortunately, I think we've done a lot, but it has not been effective. So.
And that's a small group.
And that's a small targeted group. And it, in my opinion, it is the most valuable piece of our properties, that water frontage piece. And that is so enlightening to me when you talk to somebody and they have no idea that we're doing it. Absolutely none. They have no idea. They have not attended the
Let me
meeting.
tell you a story about communications. Because I agree with everything that you've said, totally. In our building, 122 apartments, we send out a monthly newsletter. It's got people's birthdays on it. It's got, we're going to be closing the air conditioning to work on a certain date. But I write a column every month. And things I cover in the column are things that are going on in the town, things that are going on in our development, and things that are specific to our building. And I guarantee you that, oh, by the way, we email it, we post it in the mailroom, and we leave it out on the concierge desk. Other than sticking it to people's doorknobs, there's no additional means of communication. At least 10 people during the month ask me a question that was covered in that newsletter. Now that's as tight of a group as you can get. It's over communicated. People just don't respond to this stuff. They're not bad people, but they have other priorities in their minds. Many of them that are 6 months here, not their primary residence, or they're here less than 6 months. So they're on vacation here, they're more focused on that. I would think that of the properties that are on the canals, I would think the percentage is higher or year round. And yeah, it's the most valuable piece. I don't know how many did we have, T, in total that came to the 3 meetings? 30.
But how many of those were not already board members or that was residents that were not part of some board or anything like that?
But that's not necessarily 30 homes. There were spouses there. So it might have been 22 homes making up a number. I don't know what percentage of the population that is, but it's pretty damn small. And it's really unfortunate. And I'm not suggesting there's nothing else we can do. We have to do better. But I'd like you to find me a town that communicates better than we do.
Well,
Okay.
as a suggestion,
Because I'd like to use them and copy some of the things they're doing.
I mean, we get the food truck events, but we don't sell ourselves. at the events.
No, there are some opportunities there.
There's big opportunities there, as well as one thing that we know, that every single resident goes up and down A1A somehow, some way. And we should have a lighted sign, you know. Do you know about marine accessories? It affects you. Could be a lighted sign instead of, you know, you're going too fast.
I would oppose that idea.
Well, I mean, we need to get the message out, and I'm just saying that you can do it in ways to get it in front of their face, because
Yep.
otherwise, if it's not in front of their face, they're not paying
We
attention.
need to be more creative. We've got to benchmark off what other communities have done that we haven't tried yet. There are more things. But back to the motion. Did you have anything else to add on?
Yeah, I guess in summary, I totally agree. It needs to increase. I think 800 is too low. And I personally think the right
We don't have the
solution is
spending,
a
right?
function of some percentage of our budget because it reflects the services that we provide. So-
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll give it back in a second. One minor thing I would change is I think it should be fiscal year implementation, not annual, not January. But the amount is going to take some discussion. So I think we need to table this for further discussion.
I'd like to comment on it.
Go right ahead. Sure.
Then I'm going to do that. And based upon the timeline, and I asked the question, is there any way that an agreement, what the timeline would be for approval, readings and so forth, and it appears that that's the earliest. So there is time to talk about this a little bit more. However, I understand checks and balances, and I'm a full supporter of checks and balances. Okay, and I think what scared a lot of the residents was that whole $5 million parks along along A1A, and that's kind of in their mind. Am I going to give an open checkbook? That's why I think a limit is appropriate. The question is, what limit? I am very open to changing the $800,000 motion, the amount, with justification of why we would have the amount. That I have no problem with. And again, I will say the key to this thing, if we all agree that we want to go forward, is making it simple. And making it simple with a CPI change each year is having a fixed number as a start, whether that's 800, 1,000,000, 600, whatever the number is. I think it's got to be very simple and understandable. And if you recall, the people of Highland Beach, which were against that committee, which was against this, I think if it's explained properly, they're smart people. I think they'll support this because it makes perfectly good sense. And as everybody well knows,
They will
for
support.
most towns, they don't even have a limit.
We couldn't find a town with a limit.
But
John, no, I think you did the research, Ron, right? Yeah, couldn't find a town with a limit.
But in saying that, checks and balances are a good thing.
But again, the whole thing was twisted because the whole concept, when you gave a number, they said, oh my God, $1 million, they're going to go out and they're going to start spending $1 million at a whack. All right. And so it was totally distorted from reality. And so I think there is an argument that says if you give a number, it scares people, or it can be used to scare people, as it was in this last go around. Oh my God, you're going to give them $1 million. Imagine what they're going to do. They're going to start writing checks all the time, doing what they want to do.
Glenn, is it legal for us to pre-test questions?
You can pre-test the questions.
One example, we put down $1 million versus we put down, or $1.25 million versus 10% of the operating budget. See what kind of positive and negative you get on that.
You're doing a survey, basically. You're
Yeah.
Testing. Yeah, you can do that. You want me to tell you the things that you can do under this new law that is very restrictive, though?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
You can do factual information. So when Marshall talks about there's items at the plant that are going to cost $500,000, $400,000, you can have that list on the website. The problem is, will people read it?
No.
But you can put it out there. You can put the factual information that says, these are items that cost more than $350,000. There can be a list of 20 items, 50 items. The difficulty is you can't send to the electors. That's the key word. Now, there could be a PAC that a citizen creates that decides they want to support this, and a private citizen can form a committee. They've got to comply with the election laws, what you prohibited is spending taxpayer dollar, right? Local government dollars to send information out, factual or not, to the electors. You can print flyers, you can put it on a website.
Well, let me be super specific. Hypothetical, 2 questions. I want to send one out that says 1,000,002 increased annually based on the budget, or X% of the budget. Say it's 10% of the budget. Period. So it increases or decreases based on the budget, or $1 million to be increased by the CPI. Can I send a couple of dozen out on each of those? Or 40 or 50 out
And when
on
you
each
say
of those?
you send out, are you thinking of the town, perhaps
The town.
hiring a polling firm?
The town
That does
hires a
that for-
polling firm or does it themselves,
Right.
sends them out to get a response.
Well, you may want a polling firm because that's their business. They know how to ask these questions in a more objective manner. And they could do polling. You don't have an election set, right? You're not setting an
No.
election, so you're not trying to influence an election. You're trying to gather information. I would phrase it as you're trying to gather information about what your town's temperature is on this
Right.
need to raise capital. And you hire a polling company to conduct that kind of factual gathering of information. Don't have
Okay.
anything on the ballot yet.
When the time comes. All right, this is going to take some more talking. Why don't we throw it on to our meeting where we set priorities? If we have time, be the last discussion, but obviously it needs to be set within the priorities. And it's going to be a high one, total agreement. Benefit is we have time. Now, to tell you something else, though, we could do it faster if you want to spend $60,000. And that's a special.
They won't let you do it in November.
If we just did a special. All
They
right.
won't let us because they're moving their office. Will not be any special elections.
Take it back. Okay.
So March of 24 is the earliest in this county to do it.
And we could not make that at this point. It's too late. Is that what you're saying? If we want.
By our process, yes, you can't get it on the March election because you have
Oh, no.
So the earliest we can do it is March of
24.
24.
Thus, the challenge becomes with capital planning. We need to know we're going to do something with a lot of lead time and hope everybody agrees. And we can't tell them why we need to do it.
Okay, David, thank you for bringing it up. Oh, you
Just
got
as a
something else?
parliamentarian in the room, there's a motion on the table.
Right.
So if maker of a motion is willing to withdraw it and the supporter is, then we can close it.
I will withdraw the motion at this point.
Agreed.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Mr.
And
Mayor,
thank you.
one item to this. I know everybody wants to do this as soon as possible. You might want to have whatever polling company you utilize, talk about, is it November of 24 or March of 24? Where is there the best opportunity? Where do more people vote? What's your trends? Does the town get a bigger turnout in November or in March? Anyway, those are just,
Well, we also have to ask, do we want a bigger turnout or a smaller turnout?
right, that's that's implicit in that question, sir.
Well, ma'am, if I may, if we're going to do a polling or have a polling company, the question we should also discuss, there were other items that were rejected on that referendum. And again,
Yeah,
some of them.
it's
might
not
be
limited
freezing,
to that.
This might not be the only issue we would like to poll.
That's for sure.
Yeah, just as a side note, one of the mistakes I think we made was having 5 questions. I think that was a bit of an overreach on our part. Okay, we're finished with that. You want to say something, Ron? Well, let me set the clock.
This is fair. Ron Riami from Dalton Place. I wouldn't be too hard on yourselves about the fact that they didn't pass. This was, I think, a steamroller incident. I mean, we've seen some of these steamrolling incidents and elections and so forth that have just been completed. And I think that, putting it out there again, some communication. I think it was communicated, like Doug, you said, show me a town that communicates better. I think it was communicated. I think it was just, when I talked to a lot of people who were voting at that time, and I asked them, you're voting no for, I'm voting no because I've been told to vote no on everything and that's what I'm doing. Do you know anything about what you're voting on? No, I don't, and I don't care. I'm voting no. Okay, so great. You're not gonna do well when the steam engine's going that way. And I think it'll be different this time. I really do. I think, brought out, I like Tasha's idea personally myself, but whatever. I think it'll work fine.
Thank you.
And I'm against spending any money on the fire house. Why do we need a fire department?
Anybody know who that was? Where are we? We're into commission comments.
You have.
Oh, no,
approval
approval of minutes. Anybody have any adjustments to be made on the minutes? No? Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now we're on intercoastal speeds. I wish Chief was here. Is he not available?
Unfortunately, he's at a funeral, so he said he might be able to make it back. I just don't know that we're gonna see
Okay.
him.
But we're not going to decide. Well, we will decide something today. There has been a movement and pressure put on the three towns, Delray, Island Beach, and Boca, to work towards reducing the speed limits on the intercoastal. And many people have worked on it. I won't bore you with the whole thing, but our state representatives have been working on it a lot. Apparently there was a document that went to Delray and to Boca, not to us. We never got it unless you've gotten it over the holidays. And they signed off on it, and that was making our segment and their segment of the intercoastal no wake zone. I called Chief and talked with him about what have we learned so far. I mean, we've had a boat out there since March, not every day, of course. And he thought it was terribly premature to make any judgment at this early stage. We just don't have enough experience being out on the water yet. I want to add to that, I'm also very concerned about dropping it down that much. That's, I think, again, what we're doing is taking pendulum from here and moving it way over here. People that are on the intercoastal, or people that are on any of the canals, one of them is sitting right here to my left. If they want to go out to the ocean, it could take them close to an hour to get out. And I don't think that's appropriate. I also don't believe we need to get it down that far. I used to have a very large boat. And if I'm going to operate that in no wake, I'm not even using the steering wheel. I'm using my power to steer the boat. It's very hard to keep a boat under control if there's wind, if you're going with or against a current. So I don't think that's the right thing to do. If we want to talk about reducing the speed somewhat, I think that's a discussion worthy of having. Right now, the speeds are 30 and 25, depending on the season. I believe the big issue is enforcement. It's not the people that are going 25, it's the people that are going 40 where the problem lies. And it's the movement is to increase safety and reduce the wear and tear on the seawalls. You know my feeling about seawalls. We definitely want to preserve them. However, any of us that bought on the seawall, and you know damn well eventually you're going to have to put money into it. So why somebody else should go slow so you don't have to put money into your seawall? I don't think that makes a lot of sense. But I think that's secondary issue. Primary issue is safety. So the feeling from Chief Hartman was it's too early for us to know whether we should be significantly reducing at this point, because there's not enough out there of police presence to bring it to people's attention. Part of it's education, and part of it is no different than having a cop car here on A1A. As soon as they see a police car, they slow down. Same thing on the intercoastal. So I'm open for discussion whether we join in on that move to get it down to 45 or have me start a conversation of, okay, if you want to reduce the speed somewhat, okay, but not that aggressive.
Just so happens, I Googled boating speed limits and what is considered an average speed because I was curious. And 20, 25, and 30 are considered low wake speeds. And a large part of it depends on the hull of the boat. And I mean, there are a lot of things that go into it
Yes,
other than just the speed limit.
it's only one of the characteristics, the
And-
whole design, the weight of the boat, how it planes, what kind of power you have in it, a lot of it.
Oh, absolutely. If you have gasoline engines as opposed to diesel, it changes how
Yeah.
things work.
Inboards versus outboards. It goes on and on.
So I think I agree with Chief. I think we need to study it more. And I also don't think I agree that it probably should not be a no-wake zone because that creates its own issues of maneuverability. And if you have to wait for the bridge to go up, and then it becomes impossible to safely deal with that. But maybe we could have them add something that says conditions permitting, which means that if there are a lot of boaters out there, well, you can't go that fast because there's too much traffic.
Well, that's logical and makes sense, but it's unenforceable. You know, when we finish, I'll turn it over to the group.
But I mean, if there are people out there in kayaks and on, you have to be safe. And also for some boats, that might be fast.
Right.
For others, it's not. I mean, I had a good sized boat too, and we used to cruise at 17 knots and we did fine. And we, even at 17 knots, we threw up a pretty good wake.
Well, the bigger boats, I was 18 knots, that put up a huge wake. Too big for out here. I'd have to go slower.
Right. But yeah,
Well-
it would take forever if it's all no wake.
Let's hear from a boater.
Yeah, I am not in favor of changing what we have now. I wouldn't want to slow it down. It does take a good amount of time to get to the inlet the way it is now. So I wouldn't want to impose a no wake zone. It is very difficult to maneuver the boat when, you know, you're just idling, you know, especially in windy conditions and things like that. So, yeah, I agree with what Chief is saying too. Let's, you know, continue to monitor. I think that's a good approach. But yeah, I wouldn't be in favor of, I don't know what the timing is of this group that you're talking about with the 3 town, like right now they want.
They're on it.
Oh, they're on it now.
They're
Yeah, I don't think that it's time for us to
Okay.
get on board with that.
David, anything to add?
I agree with you.
Okay. You wanted to speak.
Can
Oh,
I
you
make
got
a
something?
statement?
Oh, I'm sorry, didn't we? But I didn't give you a chance yet. I
No.
apologize.
So I have a little different view. If we have enough understanding as to what happened in the 2 deaths that happened this year. Small boats overcome or affected by wakes of large boats, losing control or whatever.
One was that, the other was totally on their own.
So the other issue is you got these jet skis that are blazing down there at 40 miles, 50 miles an hour. I mean, really fast. And you've got, and I'll have to admit, 10 years ago, I used to go out with my kayak on here. That's suicidal these days. So I'm really concerned about safety and speed. I think that certain vessels like jet skis and small speedboats shouldn't be doing 50, 60 miles an hour. I can tell you, I had someone bragging how he was doing 70 as he was passing our town water tower, 70 miles an hour. Well, I shouldn't say miles per hour. It was 70
Knots.
knots, 70 knots.
1 point.
It's more than 70 miles per
Yeah.
hour. So It happens, it's happening. I think that is the problem. And if, as soon as we have a jet skier die out there or another small boat who capsizes or gets off, or he's not paying attention and crashes into us.
Are
Well,
you
we gotta-
proposing that we
So
support the no wake zone?
to me, there's a difference between no wake and lower speed.
Yeah,
And right now, the speed is too high. We need to take the speed down without necessarily making it no wake.
okay, I thank you for your input. However,
Now, that's
The-
the third, however, I've gotten from you.
the speed limit now is 25 and 30. And we know there's a bunch of variables, depends on the boat size, et cetera, et cetera. Chief's point, which I thought was valid, or my point to Chief was, when we first went after starting the Marine Division, was to get people to obey the speed limits. And presence and education are the key there. And that's what they've been working towards. You know, they gave a few summons out, but not much, but they pulled over a whole lot of people. And he said, people that they have pulled over that they now see have cut their speed. Now, they've also seen the police boats, so who knows if they're doing that for the whole thing. But I would entertain a discussion of going below 30 and 25, but we need to know more before we say, yeah, it should be 20 all the time. Well, I don't know if that's right or that's wrong, but we know that people are not doing the current speed, and that's got to stop. Rick?
Rick Greenwald, Tranquility Drive. This one, you know, we went through this discussion, it seems like not that long ago. I think right before commission decided to invest in a Marine Patrol, which I think was an excellent decision.
Which happened to have been a year ago.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Couple of things, though. I mean, to John's point, that's really not relevant. If people are going to go 70 miles an hour or 50 miles an hour in a jet ski, that's an enforcement issue because they're already going twice what the speed limit is. So making the speed limit lower is not going to affect that. So I would just, it's a problem, but I would put that one aside. The rest of it is a boater. I would be really rabidly opposed to just indiscriminately decreasing the speed limit. As somebody who likes to go fishing, it makes a big difference to me whether following the current rules, some of which is a low speed zone when you get into Boca. Low speed zone, when you look it up, translates roughly to 10 miles an hour. A no wake zone is roughly 5 miles an hour. The size of the wakes and everything, as you've talked about, that's really hard to legislate, I think. But it really makes a big difference if you actually have a destination, whether you can go 25 miles an hour or 5 or 10 miles an hour. And it really changes your day. So I would be opposed to it. There are things, and I understand that some people who are right on the intracoastal, they don't like waves hitting their seawall, and I get all that. And there's a safety issue, and I get all that. It's almost all during crowded hours and hours particularly late on a weekend where people have unfortunately been drinking and driving their boat. And probably their reflexes aren't quite as sharp and their judgment isn't as good as it might ordinarily be. So there are ways, if we had to do something, and again, I would prefer just better education, better enforcement, maybe handing out some more citations rather than changing the speed limit. But there are ways to compromise with this. There is an area of the intracoastal that's south of the Camino Bridge where the speed limits are lower on the weekends during certain hours, for example. High utilization times, that might be something that could reasonably be looked at. And that would not affect me, for example, as a fisherman who likes to go out at 6:30 in the morning because there's never anybody else on the waterway at that time. But aside from looking at it from a selfish standpoint, that might make sense because On a nice Saturday evening at 5 o'clock, there is a big stream of boats going up and down. And if they're all trying to go 30 miles an hour, it can create a somewhat, it can look sort of like a washing machine out there with the wakes bouncing off the seawalls and everything. So there may be some compromises, but I would not like to see the town be party to a knee-jerk, real overreaction in terms of limiting boating. Many of us bought our houses where they are because of the availability of boating. And property values and everything else are actually tied up with here's how long it takes to get to the inlet. The fact that there are no fixed bridges. I mean, anybody that's a boater, it's second nature, but to people who aren't, they don't know about any of that. So I would just be a little bit cautious before leaping into letters of support for this sort of thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seems as though the commission's in agreement. Do we need a motion on this? Don't think so. Okay, we're good. Good conversation. Let's move on now to commissioner comments. Start with David.
Nothing to add, thank you.
Move it down to you, my friend.
So I really learned a lot at the Marine Accessories seminars. I view them as kind of a seminar. And I thought more about the BFE, the base flood elevation, and specifically about the condo. And so I had a nice conversation with Ingrid, who was, she's very sharp, and she educated me. And I don't know if maybe I'm the only ignorant one here, but I said, I want to know what the BFE is for my condo, right? I'm sitting on the water and I want to know, for insurance reasons, where's the BFE? Well, you have to go to what I've learned to be the FEMA firm website. Firm being Flood Insurance Rate Map. I said, wow, that's cool. So all you do is you go to that website, just one page, you put in the address of your condominium, and it pops up with your condominium right there, an aerial shot laid out, and it tells you the BFE. And in my case, in the past, it was 10 feet. And they're currently, I guess, under consideration to raise it to 12 feet. So I'm thinking, does that mean that I could shave a little bit off my insurance premium for the condo? I don't know, but I think we all should know what our BFEs are, especially if you're along the ocean, but even along the intercoastal, given, that's where supposedly when you have floods, it's going to be coming from the east, from the west rather than the east. Anyways, I wanted to pass that along to you. And Ingrid was, like I said, very sharp and brought more definition. We throw around BFEs, flood, the base flood elevation, like it's, well, what does it mean? And how do I get that number? So that's how you do it. Okay, so I wanted to share that with you. Next thing is the food truck event.
Wait a minute, back up.
Okay,
So you have the base flood elevation.
yes.
What do you do with it?
So when
What are you going to do with it?
So first of all, I realized that we have a seawall that's only about 2 feet above that. So at least we now know that it's not below. That's number one. Number two, it's okay, how does this affect, in my next conversation with our insurance broker, if it has any effect at all, especially when I can say, by the way, they've raised it 2 feet, so we're even more safe. Because the other part of it is, even in a worst case scenario, with a storm surge of 20 feet, you're only going to affect the first 2 floors of my building, right? That's better than the whole building.
Yeah, but where are all your mechanicals?
Yeah.
Where are all your mechanicals?
Fortunately, the cooling tower is on the roof, but
Yes.
the rest is in the basement.
The rest on the first
No
floor.
question about it.
Not the first
So,
two.
but again, I'm trying to find any way to beat this insurance rap that we're dealing with right now. It's just awful. There's not too many ways to avoid it. And the premium of 50% increase is just beyond me.
Yep.
So anyways, I pursued it. It's just an opportunity. You might want to consider it.
Thank you.
Um,
Oh, you got more?
Yeah, I have more. I got three more. Food truck. I just need to reinforce the fact, the best way I can describe the food truck event and how it really has affected me, even though over the holidays, I was traveling around through some of the towns here, looking at signs and whatnot for the towns. But it occurred to me, if I were out west anywhere, you don't get any feeling of community. I mean, you're just in a separate house out there in the middle of nowhere. I don't see where there's community. And with the food truck event, more than ever, I was overwhelmed with the feeling of community here at Highland Beach that can be developed more than I think anywhere else. Now, even at Delray, when they have these crazy events, it's like everybody's coming in from out of town and it's crowds and that's not the community. I'm talking about those are the residents that are interested in what's happening in our town and knowing people by name, being able to have that relationship. I think it's really important. So it's been great. That's all I want to say there. We are, and with Linelda's help and with, I think, the outstanding work that the town manager, Marshall, has been doing with his Managers Monthly. We're going to be even providing more information about the Hidden Heroes program from Elizabeth Dole and what they're doing nationally and the resources that's available for our veterans. And just wanted to pass on that this is really a good thing, to say the least. And when it comes to veterans, I've completed one on our new commissioner, Dave Stern, as a veteran. So the article is done. That will be coming out soon, as well as I've got 3 others in the tank coming. So we're cooking there.
Excellent.
One last point would be, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
First, I just want to wish everybody a happy new year and hope their holidays were enjoyable and not too much conflict. As I watched the fireworks on New Year's Eve, I was wondering, because I know Delray sets them off and I know Boca sets them off. Do we? And can we? And how expensive would it be?
Sure, we could amend the ordinance and then it's just money.
I mean, because that might be nice twice a year, July 4th and New Year's Eve.
You guys could. It's definitely, we have the ability to do it. Just if you want to.
I mean, I'm up high, so I can see fireworks from, and I'm situated, so I see it from the ocean all the way west. But a lot of people can't. So if it was closer, they would be able to see them.
They have to be situated someplace so they can see them. They're not going to see them from their apartments.
I do.
People that are lower, I'm responding to that.
Oh, lower. Well, no,
And-
if it's in the they facing the intercoastal, or they could go out down to the water, which a lot of people did.
They could go to the beaches.
They could go to the beach or they could go down to the intercoastal.
However.
We'll put it on the list and talk about it in our special meeting.
I mean, it was just a thought that it might be something nice to do.
Okay.
And no, other than, we did a lot of advertising for the last food truck event. And we sent out emails, we sent out flyers. It was mentioned in 2 different managers' minutes. It was all over the place. And the day afterwards, somebody called me and said, I just got the manager's minute and it talked about it and it was yesterday. And she was very upset.
Yes.
So it almost doesn't matter how much you try to communicate. If people don't sign up for the town website where you get lots of emails, there's very little way we can truly get people to pay attention. We sent out mailers, there were flyers, there were all kinds of things. And I don't know what else we could do to get the message across. We're not putting up a billboard.
We could put a banner up, 2 weeks before an event. I mean, if you want to get into that world, I really don't like.
I
it,
don't, no, I'm not a fan of.
The resident that
of
you spoke with, we had the conversation with as well. We were a little surprised, like a lot of people know it's been well attended.
400 people showed up. I mean.
So I get the complaint about, you put it in the mail, it takes a while. Well,
Yeah, and it wasn't.
it's the US Postal Service. I guess we could print our own and then just drop off chunks to the condos and let them, pick them up like you lay yours out, see if that works any better.
But you did it multiple times. I mean, it wasn't just that one before the event. You also did it in the prior monthly, which had it in there.
I put
So-
into the newsletter that we do every month.
Right,
I put it in.
right.
So even people that don't get our emails knew about it. And we didn't have a good showing from our building. I was not happy about that. But that's a different discussion. But we had this huge showing. Yes, I thought it was very well communicated. Also, they've been building. Each successive one, we've had more and more people.
Yes.
And this time we had all the seasonal people in residence. So that's why we blew the top off of it. I mean, we can't handle any more than what we had.
No.
It was great having an extra food truck there. That was helpful. Okay, anything before we get off of this? Did you want to say something? You have to come up here. Give us your, yep. See, because there are people that are watching and they can't hear if you say anything from the seats. So turn it on.
Thank you.
There's a button on the face.
No,
I think it's on now.
you got it.
Okay, thank you. I'm David Newman, Townhouses of Highland Beach. First, I would like to thank the commissioners and all of you that are present, and thank you for your hard work. I know it's a commitment, and I know you mean it, and I can see the enthusiasm from the group. So I'm very grateful, and I think the community is, hopefully. The issue I wanted to mention is something that you brought up in the beginning. I'm sorry I was late today, but the issue of the leaf blowers. And then when I got here, it looked like you were just sort of slipping it under the rug. And to me, it's a very major issue. I can't see any basis for keeping gas-powered leaf blowers in this community. I just think it doesn't cost the community anything to convert from gas to electric. And the benefit is to the environment, which is obvious. Instead of all the gas, we're trying to clean up the environment. We can do with less global warming, of course. We can do with less noise pollution, and we can do with less dust pollution hitting the cars and going all over the place. And we could also help the poor people that are carrying these machines around, breathing the gas, affecting their hearing. I feel like they're almost, being abused as human beings. I don't see them smiling and relaxed, and they don't look happy to me. And what is the downside? So they have to buy another leaf blower. It costs a couple $100. I mean, what is the downside to doing it? Less noise, less pollution. If you count on the condominiums, they say, well, it's going to cost us another $20 a month. No, we'll have to get the community. You'll spend years trying to get the condos to agree on that because somebody's going to vote again. Somebody's not going to spend another penny. So it's not really a financial issue. And I think trying to put the burden on each condo is shirking your responsibility to protect the community. So that's my thought on leaf blowers.
Well, thank you for your input. I just one quick response, and we can't be going back and forth, and we generally don't just answer these. However, it was not swept under the rug. We run our business here off of strategic priorities, and there is a significant list of all the different initiatives and different projects that will go on the list. Where it fits on the list, we don't know yet. Okay, but step one is get on the list. It's on the list. Okay. And we recognize that we don't all agree about how important it is. That's all. So we need to see where it fits, and we can't do everything all at the same time. But step one has been accomplished. Okay. We have to, when we meet and go through our strategic priorities and we rank them, ranking meaning we go from top to bottom, 1 to 47, whatever the number is, in terms of what we're going to attack first, second, third. And it's not so, to a degree, it's based on how much work it takes, how long it'll take to do it, how important we believe it is to the community is the driving factor. Okay, so give you one example, zoning. Critically important to this community, very lengthy project. That would probably fit higher on the priority list. Doesn't mean that we only work on one thing, though. Work on a lot of them. Okay, so next step is where it's going to fit. Okay. You wanted to say something?
Yes, briefly, with respect to getting more communication with residents on the outreach, can we expand it possibly using the voter list? Is that permissible?
We do.
Voting.
The voter
Votes
list.
list.
Yeah, it's in our mailing list.
Okay, I didn't.
See,
I
the
wasn't aware
problem
of
with the
that.
voter list is it's very limited,
Mhm.
because when one registers to vote, they're not required to give their email. So some people give it and some don't. The ones that do, we have.
Okay, well, we do have the address, however.
Yeah, we have all the addresses.
So perhaps in light of that and consideration, it'd be an earlier outreach. You know, the emails can be repetitive and the mail would just be sent out
Yeah, it's
earlier.
just costly, that's all.
Yeah, and the seeking, you may already do it, seeking the cooperation of the boards on the respective buildings.
We
Just
do
to
it.
post the notice at the mailbox or.
Yep. We can provide the flyer to be posted, though.
Yeah.
That might be worthwhile.
Okay.
Thank you. You are finished, Emily? Natasha?
I wanted to remind everyone to submit your ideas for the town sign. So we have about a month left before we close that. So I hope we get a lot of really good ideas. That's it.
Okay, I'd like to ask, David already spoke. My turn.
Can I just add one?
No, you're done.
Channel 99, like this, text saying.
Lovely. That's been an ongoing problem. Okay, I'd like to get a report from Chief on police boat, and the whole marina thing. Been a year since we approved it, roughly 9-10 months since it's been out there, kind of start to finish. Including that report, I'd like to know how often it's gone out. The good news, I tell him that I look right out our marina and the slip where the boat is there. So
I told him that's a
I
slippery
see it
slope to
most
be
of the
on.
time.
Parked right outside the mayor's office.
It just doesn't appear to be out at the right times. Many times, sometimes it is, and it doesn't appear to be out often enough. But there may be a reason for all that. So not drawing any conclusions. I think we get feedback from him, plus some data. I'd like to know how many times it went out, why, what have we learned? What's the future schedule look like? The last thing is condo board security. Sounds crazy. However, there have been 2 incidences. One in Canada, the other, I believe it was in Rome. I don't remember where in Canada, that condo boards were attacked by a resident during a meeting. Resident had a gun. Fortunately, no deaths, but we're just starting to put so much financial pressure on residents that board meeting is going to become more and more contentious. I'm not suggesting that, we have people go by the police and set up, security that they have to walk through, but, we have so many units so many buildings here, so many condos, that God forbid something happened. We just need to think about what can we do as a commission to advise condo board presidents? And we'll certainly cover it in our next president session. But I know if I thought I was going to have a problem, I'd call chief and ask for an officer there, the officer would be there. I don't know that others know that they can do that. But on the other hand, we don't want an officer at every condo meeting. So I'm not suggesting that, but we need to give it some thought.
Yes, like waves of ideas on certain training, board training we could provide through the PD on things to watch
That'd be
out for,
great.
what to look out, how to set up a room. Yeah, how
There you
to
go.
identify potential hazards.
Well, why don't we include that in the next condo president meeting? And when we send out the flyer, we'll tell them this is what's on the schedule. And obviously we'll have chief there. Okay, that's all I had. Glenn's not here. We'll move on to manager's report.
Yes, I'll start with the exciting stuff. So, last year, our chief building official was building official of the year here in Palm Beach County. This year, we are honored that Carol Holland, our lead permit tech, our office manager in the building department, became permit technician of the year for building department. So Highland Beach presence in the building world is doing quite well. And we're very excited for Carol after all her years of service and her commitment to the community. Anyone's met her, very lovely woman, very committed to our organization and the community. So kudos to Carol for that win in becoming permit tech of the year. Is that how it said, Jeff? Yep. So she's that for 2022. That's very exciting for us. 3R project. So we've been communicating with FDOT. We got plenty of lead time, but they're looking at March 6th or the 13th for the follow-up public meeting on the 3R project on A1A. If we're leaning towards the 13th, if anybody has major issues, if you could let us know soon, but that meeting will be coming on the 13th and will be at the library. We will make sure that that community room's available because of the level of attendance. So if you recall, whatever that was 8 months ago, FDOT came and talked about the project, the layout, this and that. This is their follow-up meeting after some more design work on A1A, what we could expect, timing, construction, design. Just they've further refined all of that for the community. 14. So the day before, stir them up a little. So, so it'll be the 13th, just to get them to have a little public workshop, like 6 to 8, come in, ask some questions. It can be a lengthy meeting for those that do attend. Just give yourself enough time. There's a lot of repeat questions when you have everyone coming up, but those are those dates coming up. Collective bargaining. We are kicking that process off a little, not early, but timely. I just want to confirm from last year's conversation that Mayor Hillman is still going to be our commission representative on the process for the process. Is that everybody still comfortable? That was set out that was going to happen. I know the mayor is graciously volunteered, right? So, so it's the process should move pretty quickly. Laura Donlin from Donlin, Torsivia, Donlin, Gatto, Anson, Rubin. Anson's not on there anymore. So Anson's off Rubin. Their firm will be representative, and both organizations have been willing that staff will try to take the biggest bites first before we bring in the attorneys and bring up those hours. So that process will be commencing internally in January. Then we're going to be reaching back out in February to start having those initial meetings with the PBA and the FOP, and starting that collective bargaining process. So that's going. Received some stuff about some dated content or missing content on our website. Just want to remind the public, we have a consultant on, and we're going to be rebuilding and modernizing our website and kind of flushing out the old stuff, getting more timely materials up there, and organizing it for ease of use for residents. I always find that the way I look at a website, being in government, pretty much my entire career, is a different approach than other people would to obtain content and material. So we're going through that exercise now. So that's going. Other than that, Happy New Year, and it's going to be busy. Special meetings coming up, fire station, all those next steps are going to be moving quite quickly here over the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Len? Well, no, at the last session, we talked about the state's recertification program effective dates and wanted to know if we need to abide by those on ours with that stated effective date, or do we have to abide by it immediately?
It would be cleaner if we were to, if you want to revise ours to reflect the states. So are you looking to, the commission want to follow the state path?
Well, no, we don't like the state path
I didn't think.
for
Then
recertification with the 2 phases and the 180 days, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not talking about reserves now at all.
Right.
Ours is more stringent in terms of when buildings have to be certified, age, location, et cetera. But we don't have the phase 1 and phase 2. We just gave everybody 365 days. Then when this came out, we modified ours. My question is, did we really have to modify ours? Or does that become effective on the date that reserves become effective, which is the 31st of December 24.
let me research that. I'm not really 100% sure.
Okay, here's why we need an answer. There's really 2 reasons. One, I believe that it's going to get modified somehow, whether it's phase 1 and 2 or dates, et cetera, et cetera. 2, if we don't have to start it until then, why force our people through it now?
Right.
Because ours is better for the residents. So that's what I need to know.
I'll find out.
Okay, thank you. Somebody asked about Milani. I think you did. Nothing has changed on Milani. The park is on hold. The Parks and Recs Department agreed with us in terms of making adjustments on the magnitude of the parking lot. Went from 125 to 42. But they put it in phases, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 was the 42. They would experiment with that for a while meaning a few years, but maintain the right to go to the 125. We then got 100, we figured, well, 42 full car, an average maybe 2.5 per car. We picked a number of 100 people on the beach. One can debate if that's the right number or the wrong number. So during a high tide, we had 100 residents on the beach at one time within the confines of the property. And showed right away that the beach can't even accommodate 100 people. It's too small. And at the same time, the Yamata Rock during high tide disappears. So people are going to run into the water right onto that rock, not knowing that it's there. So what we communicated back was that the beach is too small to even accommodate 42 cars, and it's very, very dangerous. Project was put on hold. Our representative to the county at the time became aware of it all, but said that nothing should even be discussed about it till after the election. Well, the election is now over. We have a new representative. Marshall and I met her. We talked a little bit about Milani Park. So she's getting briefed on it now. We have to go back and talk some more where it stands. Okay. Okay, one other thing I forgot. We have ready to show you what was presented at the Beach Condo Association. If you'd like to see it now, it'll take about 15 minutes, or we can hold it over to the next meeting because it's almost 4. Hold it over. Okay, hold it over. Okay, that's what we'll do. If there is nothing else, last chance, if anybody wants to add anything. Okay, at 3:54, we shall adjourn. Thank you all.
Computer, you're ready to go. Start typing memos.